Great to see you here again. My name is Luc de Koster, founder of the Koster Academy, and we're talking here about stakeholders and communication. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the communication process. How does it work when we are communicating with people? But before we continue, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. So let's have a look. What is the communication process? How can we describe the communication process? And as a project manager, you must understand all these relevant factors of communication. You have to be a master in communication, but be careful when we're talking about communication management in the project management processes. We're basically talking about the way to do it. We're not talking about the soft skill of communication, but you also have to understand how these soft skills work and what the effect is on the communication. Communications always originate from a sender to a receiver, and we call this the sender-receiver model. So the sender encodes a message, writes a message different ways, or says something, and sends that message to the receiver. And the receiver has to decode the message, has to understand what the message is about. So basically, sender, receiver, sending a message to the receiver. Now there is the need of a medium to send that message. The medium is how we send it. When we're talking, the medium is the air. We're communicating through the air. When we're having a telephone, we're using the telephone as a medium to send a message from my side to the receiver's side. Now, when we have a medium, we have to be able to understand that medium. If I'm sending things through a medium, messages through a medium that the receiver cannot use, well, then there is a problem. So the medium has to be available and be understood by both parties. The main thing about communication is if there is no message, there is no communication. Basically, when we don't want to send a message or when there is no message to send, there is no communication. But from the moment we have a message, then all the communication process elements start to be happening from that moment on. Once the receiver gets the message, the receiver should send a feedback to the sender. The first thing can be just an acknowledgement and saying, okay, I received the message. The next thing is to make clear that you understood it properly. That's why you have to give the feedback. One element we don't like about the communication process is that there are always disturbances. The message is disturbed, and we call that the noise. When we have background noise, typically when there are airplanes around, when there is noise around us, when the transmission over the internet or the cable or the telephone is not proper, then we have problems, and that will have an effect. In fact, we have to deal with that. We have to understand what can go wrong. Now, we always have to work in a certain context. What are we dealing with? What is the context of the message? And we have to look at the time to send the message, the space, and the structure. But let's have a look at the sender and receiver model. We have the sender and the receiver. The sender sends a message to the receiver. That message can be disturbed by noise. Whatever noise is, it's anything that makes the message unclear for the receiver. What does the sender do? The sender encodes the message, sends a method, and sends that message to the receiver. The sender have to be sure that they receive a confirmation of the reception by the receiver. And they have to verify the understanding, that's the feedback, from the receiver. The receiver decodes the message, confirms the reception, I received the message loud and clear, restates the message to confirm it, and to be sure that the receiver understood the message properly. That's sent back to the sender, where the sender will verify the understanding of that message. So this is basically the sender and receiver model. Of course, we can have more receivers receiving the message. We may have different types of noises around, but basically this is the sender and receiver model, the sender sending a message to the receiver. Another thing that we have is communication lines and stakeholders. When you're alone, and we see that sometimes in the webinars, when the breakout sessions, when somebody is alone, you cannot communicate with anybody. So typically they call out to me. I'm not in the picture here, but okay, you can talk to that imaginary person sitting here in Prague behind the computer. Of course, once we have two people, we have one communication line. When we add a third person, we add two more communication lines. A fourth person, we add three more communication lines. And you see that by adding more people, the added number of communication lines is constantly increasing. We add another person, and now we have 4 new communication lines. And we can say that the number of communication lines can be calculated with the formula n times n minus 1 divided by 2. And we see that the communication lines grow with a function of n squared. So the more people communicating, the more communication lines we will have. In addition, what we have to say, what are basically the official communication channels? We may have to divide, we may have to provide official communication channels to avoid that everybody is talking with everybody. Now, typically we have some exercises here, and when we look at an example, this is our formula. Let's say example 1, we have initially 25 people, and we remove later 5 people and add 10. What happens with the communication lines? First, the initial number of communication lines, we have 25 people, is 25 times 25 minus 1 divided by 2. Basically, this is 25 times 12, which is 300. Now we remove 5 people and we add 10 people. This gives us a new amount, 25 plus 10 minus 5, which is 30 people that we have in this moment. Now the new number of communication lines is 30 times 30 minus 1 divided by 2 is 435. So what happens here? It means that with the action of adding 10 people and removing 5, we increase the number of communication lines with 135. So that was it for this video. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and whenever we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you, and bye-bye.